right, welcome back to another day of Vlogmas, and today we're going to be sewing up a pouch, which is view B, as well as a cosmetic case. All right, so here's one thing I want to mention is it's going to be kind of like a pair of the pouch and the cosmetic case. You could do it in one solid color. You could do color block it like I'm going to be doing, but you do not have to use it as a cosmetic case. You can use it as a thank you where you could give to your children's teachers as a Christmas gift as well. You could also use the pouch to put all your personal items. It doesn't necessarily have to be brushes, but you know, when I say personal items, you get what I'm saying. The cosmetic case could also, you could store your little perfumes in there, like from Bath and Body Works, gift cards. I mean, you can put a whole bunch of different things in these little things. They are nice for travel. So if you're traveling for the holidays, the Christmas holidays, you could definitely use both of these together in your carry-on bag as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So the pattern that we are using today for the pouch and the cosmetic bag is Simplicity 9525. So let's go ahead and talk about the instructions. So this one is a fairly simple sew. It shouldn't take you very long to get this one done. View B and View D are the two that we are doing, what you see highlighted right here, the zipper cases. Now, in terms of the pattern pieces you will need pattern piece number 3, 4, and 5 for View B, which is the pouch. Now, if you want to do View A, the sewing is pretty much the same. It's just smaller. You will need pattern piece number 1, 2, and 3. All right. So if you're doing View A, follow along while I'm doing View B, you'll need pattern piece 1, 2, and 3. If you are doing View B, the view that I am doing, you will need 3, 4, and 5. If you are doing View C, the cosmetic case, you will need 2 pattern pieces, which is just pattern piece number 6 and 7. And then View D, which is the bigger one that I am doing, you'll also need 2 pattern pieces, which is pattern piece number 8 and 9. Now, if you are doing View B and D, the 2 that I am doing, grab pattern piece number 3, 4, and 5, 8, and 9. 5 pattern pieces, okay? Now, one thing I want to focus on right now is the interfacing. Now, normally we use just regular fusible interfacing. This one, you're going to need fusible fleece. Once again, fusible fleece is what you will need as your interfacing. So do not go and get fusible interfacing as if we're doing garment sewing. No, 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 ma'am. You will need fusible fleece, okay? And you can get that from Joann's as well. It's right next to where you get your fusible interfacing as well, all right? One other thing I'm gonna tell you before I get into the pattern pieces and what you need to cut out, I am using 2 different fabrics. So if you want to do the same thing that I'm doing, make sure you get 3 different fabrics, 2 regular fabrics, and then 1 for your lining. All right. So I'll show you that here shortly. So let's go ahead and get into the pattern pieces that you will need in order to construct both your pouch as well as your cosmetic case. All right. So let's go ahead and start with what you will need in order to construct the pouch. So first pattern piece is pattern piece number 3, which is your tab for View A and View B. Now I'm doing View B, so I'm just going to focus on View B. And you're going to need to cut 1 of fabric and then interface 2 of these. The interfacing, once again, is fusible fleece. Now, I have not interfaced this yet, but I will here shortly, okay? But you need to interface 2. I'm going to tell you to definitely transfer your markings like you see right here, that I have transferred my marking on all 4 of them. All right. Next pattern piece that you will need is pattern piece number 4. Now I'm going to show you my fabric. You're going to cut 2 of 2 different color fabrics. Okay. So I have 2 of the red fabric, and I'm going to put the name of the fabric up on the screen so you're able to see that if you're interested in this fabric. Okay. And then 2 of the white fabric. All right, so that's pattern piece number 4. And the last pattern piece that you will need for the pouch is pattern piece number 5. Now this one, pattern piece number 5, right here will be the bottom portion of your bag. I'm sorry, bottom portion of your pouch, right? So I'm sorry. Pattern piece number 5 is your lining. So this will be the inside of your pouch, all right? So that's all you will need in order to construct your pouch, which is view B, all right? So let's go ahead and get into the cosmetic bag. You'll only need 2 pattern pieces for your cosmetic bag. First pattern piece is pattern piece number 8. So this is your handle, which is the little small part on your bag. You need to cut 1 of fabric and then 1 of fleece. So don't forget you're gonna fuse this together. I'm gonna fuse mine together once I start working on my bag. The other pattern piece that you will need is pattern piece number 9. Now pattern piece number 9, this portion right here is the actual case that you will be cutting. So make sure you cut 1 fabric, 1 of fabric number 2, and then 2 of lining and 2 of fleece, all right? Once again, you're gonna do whatever fabric you wanna do, 1 of each, 2 different color fabrics if you're doing it color block. If you're not gonna do it color block, you just need to cut 2 of 1 of the fabric if you're not gonna color block it. You need to cut 2 of lining and then 2 of fusible fleece, all right? So that's all that you need in order to get started. So we are going to first work on the pouch. So I'm gonna move pattern piece number 9 out the way so we could go ahead and start working on view B, the pouch. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so let's go ahead and get into sewing the pouch in the cosmetic bag. First of all, I wanna say go ahead and depending on what you're sewing, if you're just doing the pouch, you're just gonna need a 9-inch zipper if you are doing view A or B. If you are doing view C, you need a 12-inch exposed zipper or all-purpose zipper. And if you are doing view D, you need a 14-inch invisible zipper. All right. So just to give you that, so for me, I'm showing a 12, but I'm going to be using a 14-inch zipper for mine for view D. All right. So now that I talked about that, let's go ahead and get into the sewing. So go ahead and grab pattern piece number 4, which is the side of your bag, okay? So you're just gonna grab 1 of each, 1 red, 1 white, or whatever color that you're using. So just make sure that you have right sides together like that, all right? All right, so now that I have my pieces together, just like so, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move this one out of the way right quick, but you're gonna do it for both pieces. So just like that, you're gonna pin the side, all right? So just go ahead and pin, matching up your notches, pin at the top, pin at the bottom, and then pin the length of your pouch all the way across. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have it pinned all the way across, using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Now I will be using 3.0 instead of my normal 2.5 length, but do whatever length stitch suits your fancy, all right? So back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then sew your seam and press it open, all right? So I'll be doing the same thing for this piece as well. So go ahead and do both pattern pieces now. All right, so now that we have the front done, or the side, whatever you want to call it, I pressed the seams open. This is what it's looking like. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to move this out the way and show you my zipper, what I did so far. So what you're going to do, I'm going to show you with the 2 remaining straps. You only really need to cut 2 out instead of 4, even though on the pattern piece number 3, it tells you to cut 4. You only need to cut 2. You're going to interface them. Then after you interface, I just basically sandwich them to the end of both ends of the zipper. This is what it's looking like. Let me show you that. All right. So we're going to place our zipper because this is basically our tabs. And I wanted to go ahead and do it. I know it doesn't show this in the instructions, but listen, you guys, the instructions are a little janky. So because of that, I decided to do my own thing, and you guys are going to thank me for an easier process. So what we're going to do is take our zipper just like this, and we're going to make sure that the right side of the zipper is placed right here on our top. Now make sure you're not doing it at the bottom where you have the two angles. You're doing it at the top. And what you're gonna do is place that there and take your lining. That's the piece that's interfaced. You're gonna place that on top, just like so, okay? And then what we're gonna do, make sure you do not have your, do not pin on your tab, but you want to pin the zipper to the top, or you can use some wonder clips if you don't want to use pins. Make sure your zipper is sandwiched between your main fabric and your lining fabric, and then you're going to pin all the way across. All right, so go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have it pinned all the way across the top, using using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Actually, it's a 3/8. I do apologize. Using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're gonna back stitch at the beginning and then sew all the way across and back stitch at the end. Now, I'm gonna make sure that I'm not sewing on my tabs, but make sure you sew all the way across, making sure you do not get your tab, okay? So if that means you need to kind of like sew this together without getting that tab, you need to sew without getting that tab. All right, so go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the zipper sewn on to one side of the pouch, it's gonna come together. Just hear me out, just look. Okay, so basically what we did, like I showed you before, we have the main fabric and I sandwiched the zipper in between and I sewed across. Now, when you open it, this is what it looks like. The zipper on this side is done. Now, what I'm gonna do is flip that down, and this is what it's gonna look like, okay? Now, I'm gonna do the top essentially the same way. So take your main fabric. We're gonna take this zipper, this part, and do the same thing, sandwich. So we're gonna put the zipper like in between at the top, like we did on the other side. Nothing changes there. Okay, we're gonna take our lining and we're gonna put that like just right on top and sandwich it, just like we did for the other one. Nothing changes, okay? Now, one thing I'm gonna say is kind of move your zipper down a little bit to where you are able to pin all the way across that zipper, okay? Now go ahead and pin. So I'm just gonna pin it in place and then sew using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let me go ahead and pin everything in place now so we are able to sew. Now, one thing I will mention is that you probably experiencing the tab area being thick. That is perfectly fine. We're gonna cut the tabs down at the end before we flip everything back to the inside, okay? So those tabs are going to be cut down a little bit. All right. So now that I have it pinned all the way across, using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end and sew across. All right. So go ahead and do that. All right. So now that we have our zipper sewn onto our lining and our main fabric, the next thing I'm going to do is cut down the excess of this zipper area, or tab, I should say. I'm going to cut that down on both ends this way. And then once again on this side. So the best way to kind of, see how much you need to cut off is look where you have your seam allowance and then cut down by the seam allowance to where it's even. All right. All right. So now that I have that, go ahead. You should have your main fabric right here and the zipper in the middle, and then you have your lining fabric on the other side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew our side seam, okay? But when we sew our side seams, we're going to sew this side seam and then this side seam. I would say sew all the way across, pin and sew all the way across, but because this tab is super thick, I'm not going to have you do that, okay? You could do that, but I'm not going to have you do that. I'm just going to have you sew this side and then this side, and you're going to do it on both sides. So what we're going to do is go ahead and pin the side seams on both sides. So make sure you pin your lining pieces together and pin your main pieces together. All right. So go ahead and pin. Now I'm going to switch over to my wonder clips because the lining is a little thick and because it's a fusible fleece. I'm going to go ahead and pin my main fabric just like so. And then I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to do the other side as well. I'm just pinning the top portion. I'm just pinning this side, but make sure you do this side as well. But I'm going to go to the sewing machine and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end, and then press your seams open. Go ahead and do that for the top and the other side seam now. All right, so now that I have the sides sewn for the main fabric and the side sewn for the lining fabric, the next thing I'm going to do is sew up the bottom however you want to leave a little opening. So I'm just going to put some clips in and I'm going to test out the opening. And the reason why I say that is because you want to make sure that your hand could fit through there. So I'm just going to move it over just a little bit about right there. You're supposed to have some dots, but look, on this, I can't see my dots. So we're just going to estimate where those dots are going to be. And you're going to do the same thing to the other side. I'm just using Wonder Clips because it's just easier for me at this moment. And it's here, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to use the Wonder Clips and I'm going to pin on this side. And then I'm going to pin on the other side as well. I'm going to stick my hand here and make sure, well, actually right here on this main fabric, you could just sew all the way across, making sure that are pinned all the way across because you're going to sew all the way across the bottom for this one, okay? So just go ahead, use Wonder Clips or pins and pin all the way across, all right? So now that I have it pinned using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end, you're going to sew all the way across at the bottom of your main fabric, which is this one. But then on your lining fabric, you're going to sew backstitch at the beginning. So to this clip right here, and then break your thread, backstitch, and then break your thread. Start at this clip, backstitch, sew all the way across, and then backstitch at the end. All right. Make sure that you leave this opening for you to turn. All right. So go ahead and do that now. All right. So now that I have the bottom of the main fabric sewn, this is the bottom. And I have the bottom of the lining fabric sewn. However, I do have a little opening right here so I could flip this in when I'm done. Now, the next thing we're going to do is make our box corner. So I'm going to show this one more time. I don't want to go too fast, but you're going to take it just like this, like you see it in my hand, right? You're going to take the corner and you're going to match up seam allowance to seam allowance. Make sure you have it pressed open and you're going to pin. Now I've been using my Wonder Clips, but my Wonder Clips is at the sewing machine. So we're just going to use these clips for right now. It's not many pins that I'm going to have to use, but I'm going to use these pins and I'm going to make my box pleat on both my lining fabric as well as my main fabric. I'm going to show you this one more time. This is this side. I'm going to do the other side for you. I'm going to take it just like so. Make sure you press the seam allowance open or to one side, whichever one suits your fancy. Pin, and then pin across. All right. Make sure you do this to the other two for the main fabric as well. Now that I have the box corner done, what you're going to do is go to the sewing machine, backstitch at the beginning and at the end, sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my box corners made, what I'm gonna do is take my nice gloves, AKA my hands. I know we're not gonna talk about the nails. We know it's looking janky right about now, but we're gonna have it done pretty soon, all right? So I'm gonna go ahead and reach in that opening, pull everything out. Once again, pull everything out through that opening, and then we're gonna make sure that now don't get too crazy and just get to pulling because we're not trying to rip any seams whatsoever. We just trying to be a little on the gentle side, okay? Just be gentle, okay? Gentle. So we're just gonna kind of go a little slow, be gentle, because we're not trying to rip no seams. And voila, this is what it should be looking like right now. You have your lining right here. It's going to go inside your bag, okay? You have this little opening, which we'll get to here shortly. You have your main fabric right here. Now grab your point turner and poke out all of your seams now. So now that I have my point turner, what I'm going to do is go in there being very gentle. And I'm going to go ahead and basically poke out all of my box corners. Make sure that that's lining up really good on both sides of the main fabric. Yes, yes, yes. And then I'm going to take my lining. Now, first, before I take my lining, I'm going to stitch this close. And then I'm going to push it in. So let me go to the sewing machine and close this real quick. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have went ahead and closed up that opening on my lining, I went ahead and cleaned up the edges. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and take my lining and slip that right in between, just like so. Make sure you definitely use your point turner if you need to poke out any of the corners, loose edges, or whatever. So I'm going to take my point turner and basically make sure I match up that box corner on both sides for the lining and the main fabric. All right. So now all you got to do is go ahead and put your items that you need in here. So this is what it's looking like. This is the inside. This is the outside. It stands up perfectly with those box corners like you want. Now, all you need to do is fill it up the way that you want to, and that's it. Give it to who you want. Now, one thing I want to mention is the tabs. Now, I did make tabs for the inside, but I decided to close my tabs off. So if your tabs are showing, that is perfectly fine. I decided that I didn't want my tabs showing. Okay. But you can if you want to. It's going to work out perfectly either way. But that's it for the pouch. Go ahead and move your pouch out to the side so we could go ahead and make our matching cosmetic bag. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that we are done with the pouch, it looks really nice, right? Let me show you. It looks really nice right there. We're gonna move the pouch out of the way and we're gonna start making our cosmetic bag. So go ahead and grab pattern piece number 9. Make sure that you put fusible fleece on your lining pieces. Now the striped fabric is my lining piece, so I have my fusible interfacing there already, all right? Now what I want you to do is first grab, now if you are doing it color block, grab one of your pattern piece number 9, which will be the main body portion of your cosmetic bag. And then go ahead and take your zipper, and using the right side of your zipper, we're going to put it down. Now my zipper is a little shorter, so I'm just gonna make this bag 12 inches instead of 14 inches. And then I'm gonna grab my clips, but you can use pins if you choose to. So what I'm gonna do is pin the zipper to the top, like so, all the way across. Okay. Now, one thing I want to do is I'm going to check to make sure that I am lining up the zipper with the center part of my top. So what I'm going to do, my bag. So what I'm going to do is put a little snip on both sides of my zipper tape, like so. And then I want to make sure that this lines up with both sides of my fabric. Now what I'm going to do is fold this fabric in half like this, because my zipper is a little shorter, right? I want to make sure that it's lined up and I put it in the center. Then that way it's even on both sides. So I'm just going to make a little clip there. Now you would only do this if your zipper is a little shorter like mine. That's 12 inches instead of 14. And you guys know how Joann's be highway robbing you with the cost of zippers. Now I will be getting my zippers from Way Whack. So for the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to do it this way. All right, so this is my main fabric. I have my little notch right there. I'm going to line up my little notch that I put in my zipper with that right here. And I'm just going to clip. And I'm going to clip all the way across the top portion of my main fabric. All right, so I'm going to clip all the way across just like so. All right, so just make sure that your zipper portion, the right part of your zipper is down on the right side of your main fabric. I'm going to bring it closer. It should look like this. Now what we're going to do is take our lining fabric right here, and we're going to place that right on top like this, okay? I'm sorry, on the right side facing. I'm sorry, I almost did wrong sides facing, but we're gonna take our lining fabric and place that right on top just like this, okay? And then we're gonna just repin it. Now what I'm gonna do with the lining fabric, the same thing that I did with the main fabric, I'm just going to cut a little snip and line that up with my zipper and my main fabric, okay? So I'm gonna take that off, line that up, and then repin everything in place. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my lining fabric right sides together with my main fabric and it's even all the way across, using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end and sew across. Make sure you do not sew on your zipper. You're just going to sew a 1/4 of an inch all the way, I'm sorry, 3/8 of an inch all the way across. Now I'm going to be sewing a 1/4 of an inch, but the pattern instruction says 3/8. I'm going to be doing mine at a 1/4 of an inch. All right. So go ahead and do that now. All right. So now that I have the main fabric attached to the lining fabric, this is what it looks like. I'm going to turn it just like that. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing to the top portion. So what I'm going to do is take the lining fabric, the main fabric, and I'm going to put that on the right side. So you see the right side of the zipper. Let me bring it closer so you can see. And I'm going to take my main fabric and put it right there at the top. Now, what I'm going to do is flip it over so you can see it better. Okay. So this is the right side, and I'm going to pin the right side of my fabric to there. Now, I already have a little clip right here, so you know that goes in the center of that zipper area. Okay. So I'm going to match that clip up with the center, just like that. And I'm going to clip there. And then, just like we just did, we're going to clip all the way across. Now, if you want to use pins, you can use pins instead of clips. I'm just finding it easier to do it with the clips just for the sake of this tutorial. All right. Now that I have it clipped, I'm going to grab my lining and make sure, if you have not done so already, fold it in half and make a clip. You will only do this once again if you are using a shorter zipper. But if you are using what is called in the instructions 14 inches, there's no need for you to do this, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and match that clipping with my zipper and the main fabric. I'm going to repin all the way across that area. Now make sure your right side of your lining fabric is on the wrong side of your zipper, okay? Just like we just done with the other portion. And you're going to clip all the way across once again like you did for the other side of the zipper tape. So go ahead and repin your lining fabric to your main fabric now. All right, so now that I have it repinned using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, go ahead, and I'm going to be using 3.0 as my stitch length, but if you want to use 2.5, that's completely up to you. Backstitch at the beginning and at the end and sew all the way across your seam. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the other portion sewn onto the zipper, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So let me get this together just like this. So this is the right side of my zipper right here, and then the wrong side of my zipper right there. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna definitely top stitch, but what I'm gonna do is make sure that everything is pressed very, very flat on both sides, and then I'm going to top stitch on my zipper area. So I'm just going to top stitch using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way across on both sides. All right. So if you do not want to top stitch, you do not have to. All right. So go ahead and top stitch if you want to now. All right. So now that I have my pouch top stitch, that's what it looks like. Now what we're going to do is, with right sides together, we're going to do the main fabric and the lining fabric. So I'm going to turn it like this to where the right sides are together of the main fabric or the outside fabric, and then the lining fabric is right sides together. And what we're going to do is we're going to pin the bottom of our lining. Now I am going to open out my zipper just a little bit like this, and then I'm going to do right sides together for both my lining fabric and my main fabric. So I'm going to pin my lining fabric first. And if you just want to use some regular pins, you can. I will be using my regular pins for this. So I'm just going to pin all the way across now. So go ahead and pin all the way across both your main fabric and your lining fabric now. Now that I have the main fabric pin, I'm going to go ahead and turn it around and do my lining fabric now. Now that I have my lining fabric pin, using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance or a 1/4, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and sew all the way across on your lining as well as the outside or main fabric. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the main outside fabric sewn all the way across, and then on my lining fabric I sewed but left an opening wide enough for me to stick my hand in and turn right side out. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take both sides just like this, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that you line up, make sure that you still have your zipper kind of loose, but what you want to do is you want to make sure that you line up the seams to the right side of this. So basically it's going to be right sides together. So let me go ahead and kind of zip up the zipper a little bit so you could kind of see that. So we're going to make sure that this is lined up with no issues, right sides together. And you're going to do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to show you on the main fabric, just like this. Okay. So this is the main fabric. We're going to line this up in the center. Now make sure, if you want, you can press it open. I'm just going to press it open with my fingers for right now. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure that this lines up. The edges are lined up here. Make sure that you are just pinning on this one. Do not pin on the lining, okay? And you could put a clip there if you want, or you could pin. For the sake of the main fabric, I'm just gonna pin there, just like this, okay? And then I'm going to pin, I'm gonna leave a little opening gap where the zipper portion is, okay? And then I'm going to pin the other portion right here across. And I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side as well. All right. So once again, I'm going to turn this and I'm going to do the exact same thing, matching up my notches right here on the side of the bag. And then right by the zipper, making sure you only are doing on the main fabric. You do not need to be sewing the lining onto it, okay? So make sure you keep the lining separate. Make sure you line up those notches right there. Press your seam allowance opening where you are close to the zipper as well. And you just want to make sure that you are lining that up like this on both, okay? So I'm going to line that there by the zipper, and then I'm going to line up the other one to the back portion, okay? Now, one thing you want to do is make sure that where your zipper is, you're going to sew but do not close out that area where it's like right here. You're going to leave like a little opening. So I would sew like from here to about there, leave this portion open, and then sew from here to the end, leaving the other portion open. I hope that makes sense. And then you're going to do the exact same thing on the lining fabric. You're just going to basically make sure that line is towards the center. Grab your lining, so lining to lining, and then I'm just going to use clips and sew and clip it together, okay? Same thing goes for this side. You're going to do the exact same thing. So let me make sure that everything is even once again. So I'm going to make sure everything is even and out of my way. And I'm going to pin using my clips. Pin there, open this out. Make sure that the back is opened out as well. And I'm going to pin there, or clip there, I should say. And I'm going to do the other side the same way, making sure that this lining, this main fabric is out of the way and it's not in the way of clipping, okay? So I'm going to clip there and then clip all the way across. And then I'm going to do the other side as well. All right, so I have this portion done. Just make sure that this is out of your way. And then I'm going to turn around and do the other side the same way, just doing the lining fabric, okay? Make sure that you are not getting the outside fabric caught into your lining. And then you're just going to pin all the way across. So go ahead and do that portion now, making sure you press the seam allowance open with your fingers instead of with a iron. All right, so now that I have all 8 sides together, what I'm going to do is back stitch at the beginning, sew as close to this press seam. I'm saying press, but it's just finger seam, but do not sew across it. I'm just going to sew to that seam, leaving a little opening, and then sew across on all 8 sides. So you're going to sew here and here, here and here, and then on the main fabric here to here, here to here, and then here to here. All right, so go ahead and do that now. Back stitch at the beginning and at the end also. All right, so now I have the side. I just did one side and the lining. I'll do this side in just a second, but I wanted to show you this. Now, if you wanted to add a tab, make your tab 1 inch by 2 inches. Cut it out of fabric, fold it in half, and add a tab right here in between on one side. And then you're going to sew across, basically right sides together. You're going to pin and sew across that area right here where your zipper is. Now, if you do not want that, what you can do is just go ahead and close it out, all right? But that's completely up to you, all right? So go ahead and do that on both sides. Close out your zipper on both sides. All right, so now that I have the side sewn, I have my tab in as well. You'll see that in just a second. The next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and make our box corners. Now, remind you, you have a handle. So I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna do with this handle first. So what you're gonna do is make sure that you apply your fusible fleece, and then I did wrong sides together and then stitch at 1/4 of an inch. Instead of me doing right sides together and then turn it out, this is going to be encased on the side as a handle like this, okay? So this goes where your box pleats is on the main fabric, and I'll show you that here shortly. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do all 4 corners for the lining first, and then we're gonna pin the 4 corners for our main fabric, okay? Or the outside fabric. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get the corners, like this is the lining. You're gonna take the corners, open it out, and then you're gonna make sure that you pin just like that on every corner. Now it starts getting a little tricky because it's a lot of things going on. So that's why I'm gonna use my pins, and I'm just gonna pin, and you're gonna sew using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance from dot to dot. If you forgot to mark your dots on this, it's okay. However, I'm going to tell you that you want to make sure you are marking your dots. Like you see a dot here, you should have a dot there. And what happens is when you create your box corner, you're sewing 1/4 of an inch. So essentially you're sewing down and up, okay? But because it is a box corner, you want to make sure that you have your seam allowance pretty much in the center, and your seams is pressed open. Now I'm just finger pressing it open, and then I'm going to pin all 4 corners of my lining and then all 4 corners of my outside or main fabric, okay? So just go ahead and make your box corners now, just like you see me doing. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the corners, the box corners done on the lining, one thing I want to mention is your handle. So it's just basically the handle is pressed with fusible interfacing in between, wrong sides together, and stitch at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now this handle goes on the same side as your zipper pull. So if you look right here, I'm going to insert a picture here of the pattern, and you will see that it's on the same side as your zipper pull, and you will be inserting it kind of on the side seam where your zipper goes, okay? But you're only attaching at the ends where your box pleats are. All right, so let's go ahead and make our box pleats, and I'm just going to attach this on the end. So I'm going to show you how to do the handle. Now my zipper is right here, so basically all you're going to do now, I'm going to slide this into the main fabric just like this. So here's my box pleat, where my box pleat's going to go. I'm going to slide my handle in. Just make sure that your handle is like this. So you want to make sure your raw edges is up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to definitely reattach my handle to the main fabric, simply only to the main fabric, not to the lining, simply because I want that raw edge. If you did right sides together, you wouldn't have to attach it to the main fabric like I have to. But if you did wrong sides together, you're going to have to unpick a little bit of the raw edges of just the main fabric, not your lining fabric, and attach it using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I forgot to do that. So I'm going to unpick mine a little bit and then make sure. So I'm going to unpick it on camera so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to unpick this right here in order to get my handle. Now, if you did this wrong sides together and attached your handle that way using 1/4 of an inch, you're going to need to put this in to where it's even, okay? So I'm going to undo this. So I'm going to undo it all the way across so you could see this, okay? So if you are doing it wrong sides together, if you are doing your handle and you have done what I did and did wrong sides together, go ahead and unpick this seam just on the main fabric now. All right, so now that I have it unpinned right here just on the main fabric, you're gonna take your handle, okay? This is the right side, this is the raw edge. So the press edge, raw edge. You're gonna take that and place it right here, just like that. Then you're gonna sandwich the handle in between the other side of the side, if that makes sense, okay? And then we're going to, once again, pin all the way across. Not all the way across, but we're gonna make sure that we leave where the zipper pull is loose, okay? So we're gonna essentially do the exact same thing. Make sure that you have your handle even with the top of the side, okay? So where your side is, you wanna make sure that it's even. And then just pin. Now make sure you are not pinning on the lining, okay? It's very important that you do not pin on that lining, okay? And just like I mentioned previously before I unpicked, we're just gonna sew on the main portion. It's just we need to sew that handle on if you sew wrong sides together, okay? So what I'm going to do is sew back stitch at the beginning, sew to this. Do not sew here. I'm just going to sew to about right here and then go here and then sew across, okay? I'm just going to do this portion right here on the main fabric. I'm not messing with my lining at all, okay? So let's go ahead and do that using 1/4 of an inch. Once you do that, we're going to do the same thing and attach from where you stopped all the way across, from where you stopped all the way across to the other side, enclosing the zipper, but you're going to be sewing on the lining, okay? So you're going to do the exact same thing. The only thing we did was unpick to add in that handle, all right? So go ahead and do that now, and then finish off your box pleats for your box corners for your main fabric. So I'll show you how that looks when we come back. So basically 1/4 of an inch doing your box corners. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now I have the box corners done for the lining and 2 sides of the main fabric, here and here. Now, the reason why I didn't do the other side is because it has the handle there. So I wanted to show you how to do that. So it's the same thing that you essentially what you have been doing. You're going to take your box pleat, fold out this corner right here. I'm sorry, but press that open with your hands, your fingers, and then you're going to make sure that that handle is basically even with the top of your box corner. Line it up, and you're just going to basically pin all the way across, like, and do your box corner the exact same way. Nothing different, nothing changes, okay? Just because you have a handle there, you would just do it the same way you've been doing. Nothing different, okay? And you would do the other side the exact same way, making sure you are using your fingers to kind of press the seams open. All right, and then sew using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, dot to dot. All right, so you're going to do the other side the exact same way. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have all the box corners done, what we're going to do is go ahead and turn our cosmetic case out softly through the opening at the lining. So this is what it looks like. And I'm going to unzip this portion right here. I'm going to unzip that because I did not unzip that. And then you have your main fabric. So you're just going to pull that main fabric out just like this. And your lining fabric will go on the inside, okay? Just like this. Bah, yeah, 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 yeah. All right. And then make sure you take your point turner and poke out all of those corners, okay? So it looks really, really nice. Now I'm going to do, before I close up my lining, I want to make sure I get the corners of my main fabric first, okay? So I'm going to poke out all the, first I'm going to do it with my fingers and then go back with my point turner and poke out all those corners. I'm doing it the main fabric first, and I'm not touching the lining just yet. So make sure you poke out all those corners for your main fabric first, okay? And then on your lining's going to sit in there, but now you want to make sure that you poke out all the corners of your lining as well, okay? And it's going to sit really nice in there very nicely. Now, you still have an opening for your lining, okay? And this is what your handle looks like or whatever. Now, I attach mine. You don't have to. I just wanted that little detail there on mine, okay? Now, one thing I want to mention, because it looks really good, you're going to have to close up your lining. So all you need to do is just press in 1/4 of an inch, just like so, on both sides. And then just sew across using 1/4 of an inch just to close that up. So I'm just going to pin mine right there and close it up, okay? So I'm just going to pin all the way across. And now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way across. And then what I'm going to do is give my bag a complete press. All right. So go ahead and do that now. All right. So now I have the lining sewn. What I'm going to do is push that down and you are in the home stretch and pretty much done after this. So what we're going to do is go ahead and give it a press. Go ahead and press it out really, really good. Poke out any corners that you may have that needs to be poked out. Put whatever items that you want in here, make sure you put those in there. I'm just basically pressing it out really, really good on all sides. And that's what it looks like. And then you just take it and close it. All right. So now you have a cosmetic case as well as a matching pouch. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you make this pattern at Simplicity9525, do not forget to tag me on all social medias at Rochelle.Handmade.Designs. So I'll catch you next time for the next tutorial. So until next time, keep sewing.